Now we can embark on our final session of the day. And of course, then we'll have a cocktail after, but this one's a really good one. It's leading up to things that we've talked about, themes that we've talked about throughout the day. We talked about tech as a vector for inclusion. Well, this one's all about the mysteries of AI. This is something that we consistently seem to be worried about. Will AI take over our jobs? Will AI be an enabler for inclusivity? Well, let's find out and understand how to overcome the biases to reach inclusive AI technologies. We have our moderator for this session, and he is Kevin Shepherdson, and he will be joined by speakers Sam Liew, Kisson Lin, and Sharon. So can I please invite our speakers onto the stage for our final session today about AI. A big round of applause, please.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm aware that this is the last session. As you know, we are going to be covering bias in AI systems, and as we know, it's going to present some major challenges. We are all concerned that it's going to worsen social inequalities, and I'm sure everyone agrees that this is intensified with the advent of generative AI, yeah? We hear about applications trained with biased data and making unfair recommendations or decisions. I'm sure everyone have heard of cases where hiring algorithms are discriminating against women, yeah? So in this session, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be dwelling into the intricate nature of AI bias. We'll look at the root causes, and we will learn about effective strategies from our speakers who will be identifying and obviously reducing biases for more equitable and inclusive AI technologies. So I'd like to introduce the panel to all of you, and Sam, say hi to everyone. And Sam is the president of the Singapore Computer Society. He's also the chief executive of the Government Strategic Business Group of NCS, and he serves on Singapore's IT Standards Committee and the School of Computing Boards at Singapore Management University, Singapore Polytechnic, and Republic Polytechnic. Wow, that's a lot, man. And we have Kisson. Kisson, say hi to everyone. Yeah, she's the co-founder and CEO of Mindverse, a startup. And here's the cool thing. They are building the next generation AI that is accessible to everyone and applicable anywhere with their core product. I think it's called mindOS. It's an operating system for an AI agent. She's also the ex-Meta and TikTok strategy director. So it's going to be interesting to hear from her perspective as well. And then we have Jacqui Miranda. Jacqui, say hi. She's the head of the Asia corporate segment at Microsoft. She leads all the businesses across all of Asia, Greater China, Japan, India, Korea, and so forth. And she's a passionate D&I. Tell everyone what is D&I.
Diversity and inclusion.
Diversity and inclusion. She's an advocate having chat women allyship councils, and she's also an accredited director at the Singapore Institute of Directors. And then we have Sharon. Now Sharon, she's the APAC South Geo Operations Vice President of a company called Dassault Systèmes. She has a proven track record of embracing and leading technology change throughout her career, yeah? From 2D drawings to today's virtual twins and driving innovation and productivity. So it's in order to have all of you here, and as you can see, we've got a whole bunch of very interesting perspectives. So here's the question I'd like to start. And the question is, maybe Sharon, I'll ask you, how do you define bias in the context of AI, and can you provide specific examples of how bias has manifested in AI systems. I'd like to hear your personal experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelvin. Hi, everybody. It's my privilege to be on this stage to share with all the amazing speakers here. I work for Dassault Systèmes. Our company actually provides technology for companies, our customer, to create products. So Kisson just told me that she fly back from China. So the plane that she travel probably use our technology. Somebody come in a car, probably that car also using our technology. So we really provide a virtual world for engineers to design and to create a virtual twin of the product that they want to make. Okay, and we emphasize on giving the tools to the engineer so that they can harmonize product, nature, and life for sustainability. So, good question on bias. It always, everywhere. So let me just share with you about in the design world that I work with engineers and design products. There was a report who says that, incident that say that actually women are really bad drivers. Okay, because, maybe we got a lot of accident report. But when they do the deep dive, root cause analysis, we realized that actually it was the design problem because, when the automotive company design a car, they use something called the ergonomics design, which means they will do the virtual human body and put it on the driver's seat and then simulate how this whole product, the car, will perform. But unfortunately, all these ergonomics are the male size and not the female. So maybe we are not bad driver, but maybe we just need more design with the female size, to do the simulation. Yeah, that's
So
what
we hear implicit bias in society, biasness in what you just said. Sam, let's hear from your perspective, from Singapore Computer Society, or basically from your background. Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, and happy to be here. I'm glad there are still people in the audience. It's 6:15 almost. Okay, so definition of AI biasness. I mean, from my perspective, AI systems that really produce biased results that impact and perpetuate our human biasness. That would be my definition. Typically, that's caused by flawed algorithms, right? So algorithms has developed through human biasness. I mean, we are all human after all, the people who develop the AI. Bias training data, that's a really serious problem these days. Source systems, source data has been producing different types of information. And when I see practitioners on the ground using synthetic data, right, that also perpetuates some level of biasness, especially if you already, right, have a preconceived notion of what the outcome of the AI or the decision to be taken would be. And then finally, there's one other point that will perpetuate AI as well, or AI biasness as well, which is really around the development and deployment of AI. And if you're not careful, the biasness will creep into the way you deploy across. I wanted to kind of indulge by sharing one statistics which I pulled out based on a UNESCO study, and it was published as a Straits Times article in May 24, so fairly recent. It actually quoted that there were some AI tools, right, in the market, probably not good to name which tool, right, that exhibit biasness against women. So I was quite curious, so I dig it up a little bit. And these programs actually purportedly talked about text and associated gender to certain labels. So women, for example, was associated very much more with home, family, and children. Nothing wrong with that, okay? But men were linked to business, salary, and career. And so you can see, even from a very simple association perspective, biasness have already creeped into these AI tools overall. Back to you, Kevin.
So let me summarize. What I've heard just now is human cognitive bias. We heard about bias being introduced via engineering decisions. And I think, Sam, you also talked about data bias in AI systems. Here's my next question. Maybe this is for Kisson. It'd be interesting to hear your perspective. What are some of the best practices for mitigating bias in AI development? And in your opinion, are these particular strategies are there particular strategies that have proven more effective than others?
Sure, thanks for the question. I think when we think about AI, today's AI is pretty much like human, and today's AI bias actually came from human society. So we know everyone has biases, and it's really hard to say, to quote, what is right, what is wrong. One thing that we do have to be aware of when using AI, this is the number one principle, is be aware of the AI bias and not to rely on the AI for all the decision making or the information. So awareness is the number one principle. When everyone is using AI in their businesses or everyday decision, just be aware there should be human intervention. Whatever AI suggests, someone needs to judge about it and needs to provide their independent critical thinking and judgment. So first, awareness. And two, how we deal with human bias is through diversity. So in teams, no matter if it's engineering teams or management team, we gotta hire for a more diversified background of people, gender, races, and that also applies to data. So one thing about AI, the bias, as Sam and Sharon mentioned, is that data bias. So when today's LLMs largely utilizes the English world materials, and we don't have much Chinese or Malaysian or whatever other languages being trained to the LLMs, and this needs government and large organizations to collaborate and provide more non-English data so that we accompany for non-English world, especially the data, the preferences that people have. And three is basically we need independent auditing firms globally. And AI is not like something that you can just read into it. Today's AI is pretty much like a black box. You gotta talk to it to know what it knows, what it doesn't know, what its biases might be. So companies don't have this bandwidth to keep talking to AI all the time, and we need the independent auditing firms to keep talking with different AI models and audit their biases and suggest the improvements. So those are the suggestions that I would say they in combination will be effective, but there's no one solution that's more effective than the other. And last thing is, I think ultimately this world need personal model rather than one large language model. One large model that applies to everyone is not gonna work. Every company, every country, and every individual will probably end up with their own personal model. And this personal model will actually have their own personal memory. And so in that way, we can say that, well, we don't actually need one unified world knowledge to represent the whole human races, the whole human society, but everyone could have different model. And this is what our company is building. We build a personal model for everyone.
Cool. So you highlighted 3 points, right? First one is awareness. That's important. You highlighted the diversity that needs to be thought through, and obviously an independent audit team. Jack, I can't wait to ask you the next question, but I'd like to first switch to Sam. I want to hear your opinion from an organization and senior management perspective, because we heard the perspective from an industry one, right? From Kisson. Your thoughts?
Thank you, Kisson. I thought your answer was spectacular. My additional thoughts to what Kisson pointed out in terms of how to kind of, in a way, avoid or mitigate biasness includes perhaps techniques around algorithmic fairness. So this requires quite a fair bit of work in terms of assigning developers that are non-gender biased or maybe a homogeneous mix of developers. Applying responsible AI practices. How do you kind of incorporate best practices, principles into your development process? Explainable AI, that's a technique that I've seen people do, meaning you do not leave it all to a black box. You explain certain principles, certain logic, or certain outcomes that will be based on certain prompts, for example. Other things that we do to avoid biasness includes regular audits. This is actually one which is commonly practiced, right, where teams are brought in to audit, to look at the outcomes based on the inputs, for example. And then last but not least, I've seen companies applying AI ethics and governance committees, right, to actually circuit break decisions, guide development team, testing team, design team in how they should actually be applying the outcomes of AI algorithms. Kevin.
I want to zoom into what you just said, explainability. Yeah, I could imagine if you were subjected to a biased decision, the first thing you do, you just blow up and say, I demand to know. How do you make that decision? So the explainability is going to be important. I also want to highlight what you just said about ethics and AI governance. So Jack, I've reserved the last few questions for you because you're from Microsoft, right? So here's my question, based on what everyone has shared. How do you foresee the field of AI evolving in terms of addressing bias over the next 5 to 10 years? Because we know the technology, the language model will get more advanced. Yeah. What steps can companies and institutions take to ensure more inclusive AI development practices?
Great question, Kevin. But firstly, good evening, everyone. I know we're standing in between you and cocktail hour, so I appreciate that. Privileged to be here with this panel, and obviously the audience as well. Look, AI by design is flawed because it's built by humans, right? And it has all the biases of all the engineers, all the inputs from user, all our experiences built into it. And it's important for key industry players, academia, companies, governments to learn and continue to evolve, and that's critical. At Microsoft, we haven't always necessarily always got it right. We've made mistakes, and hence we empower our employees through 6 responsible AI principles throughout the organizations on behalf of our customers and partners. They are fairness, reliability and safety, privacy and security, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability. And we make sure that we put this at the policy level, the research level, and the engineering level, and we have the right checks and balances to make sure we pause and reflect at the right time to adjust and learn from this as well. And this is critical, Kevin.
Agreed. Now, I'm sure everyone agrees, prescribing measures for every possible incident, right? Even forecasting what could happen is going to be challenging. What do other speakers think? Would it be more effective to adopt the AI ethical principles that I think Jack talked about to address these biases as opposed to just looking at specific actions because you don't know what's going to happen? Yeah. Any of you want to share your thoughts?
Maybe I can take this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I actually help many companies to adopt new technology. So I think firstly, education is important. So for example, in Dassault system, we actually believe AI will and should be the service of people. So we let, like what Kisson say, right? You are still responsible to make the final decision. And really always with human supervision, the AI is an accelerator for the cause that we defend alongside natural intelligence. We are the one that have the final decision. We are the one that make the final, we have the real human intelligence. Okay, that one is only artificial. They give you all the data, but they didn't give you the knowledge. They didn't give you, because we need to have knowledge and understanding to apply, correct? So I think for us, our purpose is to harmonize product, nature and life. So we want to empower individual in the organization with the knowledge and know-how so that there's a positive use that will impact our life. Yeah.
Before I go to the audience, I'd like to ask Kisson, right? You develop AI agents, right? So one day, my AI assistant will be talking to your AI assistant, and you'll be setting all our schedules and all of that, right? What are your thoughts to what we just discussed? Yeah.
Well, I think first of all, human intervention definitely is important. So in our AI assistant, one thing that we built is we allow people to train our AI agents with natural language conversations. So the more you talk with AI, the more they understand you. And that's the personal model that we mentioned, we talked about. So if you find that your AI agents, there's any knowledge, specific piece of knowledge that it's incorrect, it doesn't reflect your opinion, your value system, you can train the AI through the conversation, just like how you train your kids.
So they all can be trained, yeah? So I'd like to open to the floor right now. I'm sure you folks have got questions, and this is a fantastic opportunity to have different opinions from startups and all that. Yes, shoot, what is your question? Please give it a mic.
Hello, I would like to ask if we assume that most companies do a lot of the technical aspects of processing their data to mitigate bias, resampling, filtering the data, having the framework that you mentioned. The question is, what is the acceptable threshold of bias that we will allow to exist, and who should be deciding on that, especially for regulated industries?
Excellent question. Who wants to take this? Yeah? Sam, you have your name on it. Yeah? Or,
Okay.
Jack, how about you, Jack?
Jack,
okay, one of you. Yeah.
You want to take it?
You take it now.
Okay, I'll
and
start
then
and then
I'll
Jack.
add on.
You see, we are fighting over questions now. Yeah, so thank you for asking the question. I think none of us are regulators in this room, but I think you asked a very thoughtful question, right? What would be an acceptable threshold? And I would probably put an assertion on the table to say perhaps the acceptable threshold is to have a zero tolerance basis first. And on that basis, everyone will come in with different biasness to say, maybe we can accept certain level of biasness here and there. And we take that on an exception basis and examine that. I would like to unpack one small point that you mentioned, which is around the point about data, right? About if you were to train a model, there are at least, or describing three things here. There are at least three things we can do to avoid getting into a whole sense of biasness in decision. The first is the selection of a diverse set of data. How do you pick a diverse set of data? Even the selection of a diverse set of data could inherently, during the selection process, be ridden with biasness. That is, in itself is already a challenge. The second point I wanted to share is I talked earlier about synthetic data. So more and more companies and organizations are trying to be responsible, right, by picking synthetic data to diminish biasness. But that in itself, if you are not careful, could also build in biasness into the model. So that's the second point to take note. The third point I thought to kind of in a way dodge your threshold question is to also think about when you build your algorithm or your AI, is there a possibility to reset your AI? So if you know that the biasness has been already too pervasive, how can you reset the AI and the algorithm? Can you reset your algorithms? And a lot of systems and a lot of platforms that I've seen, and again, I'm not privy to 1,000 platforms, but I've seen some platforms, right? A lot of the systems and build-up actually do not allow you to reset the bias or the data that's already been trained upon. So what do you do in those situations? And that's a difficult one to resolve.
All right, so I'm going to ask Jacqui, but let me just summarize what he said. So the thresholds are at 3 levels, right? It's at the data level. The biases can be there. I think you also spoke about the synthetic data. And then the last one is at the model level, the AI model level. So we have to look at all the different stages of the AI development life cycle. Jack, this is for you.
I love the question, by the way. Nice, direct. I love Sam's response. I think we strive for zero tolerance. I mean, that's our goal. It needs to be our goal. But there's always going to be inherent mistakes that come in. And in some level, we won't be able to predict it. I think it's important to have, obviously, the right principles, the right governance. All of that is great. It's also important to set time to learn and reflect, because we're going at such a pace. So, it could be regulatory industries, it could be finance, and government, or it could be where there's zero tolerance for any kind of mistake, safety, right? And so, criminal justice system, these things that need to have zero tolerance. But the only way we learn is to pause, reflect, and adjust, and building it in as part of the process. So if there's a mistake or if there are errors, you catch it.
Right, so we heard ethical principles, we heard learning, pausing and reflecting. Yeah, so I think this awareness hopefully will answer the need to look at the thresholds, and then we can decide. Let's hear, are there any other questions?
Thank you very much for an insightful panel. Just a quick question on, so far we've seen a significant digital divide that's been pervasive for the last couple of decades. Now with the AI revolution coming in, how will we prevent it from exacerbating this further? And that speaks very directly also to how the biases are created.
Anyone wants to volunteer? Digital divide, the key word. And what do we do?
I'm happy
Jack,
to.
would you like
I
to
don't
take
want to
that?
hog it, but again, great question. I think if you look at the digital divide, there are many kinds of digital divide. An example could be exacerbating a disability divide. And so it's important for companies to think about, again, and apologies, but going back to the principles, because if you have these principles as part of how you're operating or how you are driving adoption of AI, you could potentially catch these elements and help mitigate it, but even help support. An example of helping disability divide, for example, at Microsoft, we have incorporated this as part of our engineering principles. So building in as part of our devices that support our Microsoft technology, facial recognition, or even speech to text, or image captioning to make sure that we're helping bridge the divide for all kinds and not just particular groups. So I think that's important. I go back to the principles that's helping us mitigate that.
And the ethical principles are important because it's difficult to prescribe, right, for measures for every single incident that we could look at. Now, we have time for just one more question. And if you don't have one, I have a question for all of you. Has anyone been subjected to a biased decision from some kind of AI system? So it's up to you. You can ask the question, or I'm asking you folks the question. Any stories to share? Fantastic. Please give it the mic. So you're going to be asking me a question, or you want to share a decision that has gone against you? Yeah?
Up front.
Mic for the lady in front. Thank you.
I might be a bit biased because I'm a former Microsoft employee and a current partner. So I'm actually an educator, so I've been an early adopter of Gen AI, and what I've seen, for example, based on what Jacqui shared, I work a lot on disability inclusion, and within that I focus on neurodiversity, right? And at the first year, I could have gotten a very different responses based on the user persona I was designing my program or intervention for. And in the past 12 months, because the data has been updated constantly, it just rejects everything when I say, please give me response based on my prompt, but for a very different user. So it just say, I cannot give you, because it's a very, I don't remember the exact text, but it says, because it's an ethical concern to give you the correct response based on the specific neurodiversity you're asking for. This is one thing. Another thing is probably when it comes to my personal data, when I'm preparing for this conference, when I was speaking and moderating, I was trying to get like different views based on my original prompt and the draft that I already prepared to guide Gen AI, and it was more of hallucination based on what I'm doing, what the edtech industry in Singapore is doing. So it was giving the first half of the answer quite correct because I've trained my model, and the second half of the answer would be like what Singapore government is doing generally in edtech. And I believe it will be improved with time, right? But this hallucination is like 3 out of 4 times, so it's quite common, and it's based on what's the recent data is, and probably the most used data is in the machine model.
Thank you for sharing. So folks, I think we highlighted the importance of what we call a data drift or a model drift, where the AI is being trained on data that becomes obsolete and therefore creates issues. So it's one thing to implement an AI system, but it's another to maintain it, as was shared, and that could bring biases here. So I'd like to just close off the session, and can we put our hands together and thank our fantastic speakers who gave us different perspectives here. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will close off the session. and may you have an unbiased time with AI. Thank you so much, everyone.
Well, let's get our photographer to take a photograph of our wonderful final panel of the day. And it's great. It's a real image. It is not an AI-generated image. As you can see, you're watching it right there on stage. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you to this wonderful panel, and truly insightful. I think I can come on stage now. We're not doing anything to the stage at the moment, are we? Because I'm just going to say, what a wonderful 2 days that we have had here at the Women's Forum. Have you guys had an amazing time? Yes? Great. I'm so pleased to hear that, because we have been filled with so many new ideas and how to continue this whole agenda that we're all on, this whole journey that we're all on to ensure women's empowerment and women's leadership. So a very big thank you to all the speakers. We had nearly 100 speakers today and yesterday, 97, I believe, which is extraordinary. So to close this forum, I would like to welcome back on stage Nannette, Lafond, DuFour to thank you all. Nannette.
Thank you. And I would just like to thank all of you for spending the last 2 days with us. And for being here now. I realize that it has been a full day and your brains are full of new information, but thank you for sticking it out. I am incredibly inspired by the stories that we've heard, by the exchanges and the creativity that's been shared between all of you, by the networking that I've seen just today, and I took a few notes. We have heard about the importance of lifelong learning, the need to balance humanity and technology. That was a theme we heard throughout the day. The imperative to fight systemic gender bias, which exists in our society. The role of mentorship and support groups and girl tribes, I think it was called, to drive confidence and not just competence, because I think that is something that we all heard was holding women back in some cases. The importance of the collective to make a difference, supporting one another. We learned that women are great investors and not bad drivers. And I think that's very important to remember. And sadly, we learned that mansplaining and the manosphere still exist. We've seen how technology, and particularly generative AI and artificial intelligence, will hold immense potential for women and girls, but also, if we don't address some of the bias in there, poses threats to women and girls more than men. And we've seen the threats of social media, particularly to women and girls. There is so much work that still needs to be done. But I am very hopeful, and as one of our esteemed panelists said, I hold the flame of hope because of what we heard today from our panelists, because you are here, because of the work we do here at the Women's Forum, and because of the energy and the enthusiasm that I have been able to experience and witness in these last 2 days. So thank you for that. Each story that has been shared and each idea that has been presented, I think, has added to a really rich tapestry of this experience. And I'd like to say thank you to all of you again, and particularly to our speakers and our partners for making that possible. As an action step, because I think we have to be more than just talking. I fundamentally believe we need to take action. I'm going to ask each and every one of you to bring that energy, that vibrant energy, back to your communities, back to your places of work, back to your families, and really help us continue to advance this kind of work. And sharing these stories and championing these ideas and nurturing the connections that you've made here today and yesterday, because we all need to be advocates for progress. We have a responsibility and the power to do so, because we can help shape a world where equality is not just a goal, but a reality. History has shown us that in times of crisis, and sadly today, I think we can all think that there are many of them happening right now, between the war and the climate crisis, between economic decline, that women suffer most, and we have an obligation to protect them. I think we need to remain vigilant and positive and proactive in this fight, and make sure that what we have achieved doesn't slip through our fingertips. Finally, together, I believe that we can build a future where equality is not just an aspiration, but a reality. So thank you again for joining us for these last 2 days. Let's continue to make a difference for everyone here, for all women, and for society at large. Thank you for joining us.